I'll start off by giving you some history of our town. Salem was first incorporated in July of 1900. The current population of town, as we all know, is 1,653, with approximately 800 households within the city limits. Out of the 501 cities within the state of Arkansas that are incorporated, there's 112 first-class cities, and Salem is one of the 112. If you notice the Purple Heart city insignia on our city population signs, Salem was the 26th city within the state to be recognized as a Purple Heart city. We partnered up with Order of the Purple Heart. I don't know if you remember the area-wide publications that done that last, I believe it was this summer. The city operates under a mayor-council platform. The mayor is the chief executive officer that handles the daily operations for the city. And many of you may not be aware, but the mayor position is actually considered a part-time position. There's nothing part-time about it. It is full-time, between working up at the school full-time, juggling the kids, keeping Heather happy at home. It's a lot. The city of Salem has an outstanding city council. We have 4 council members. Ted York, I don't know if you're here today, Betty Teague, Richard Frazier, and Mr. Bill Newton. That's the 4 that the city has. We meet monthly. They're informed during the monthly meeting by reports from the department heads. Also, we go over financial statements for the current or the previous month. The 3 department heads that the city utilizes is Bill Worsham. He's the public works superintendent. The fire chief is Nick Blanton, and the police chief is Shad Overman. When it comes budget time, the 3 of those department heads compile their budgets. They weigh out want versus needs. Once they finalize it, they submit it to myself, and Pam Bryant, the city treasurer, will go over that. We'll look over historical data to make sure that it is feasible within our budget and make sure it's in line with last year's finances. I was asked this morning to kind of mention on how the congregation could assist the city with our operations. The number one priority that I'd see would be to shop local. The city relies heavily on sales tax for our governmental operations. Ms. Sandra, are you able to get the slide by chance to kind of show the breakdown on our revenues? For the year of 2015, the city received 43% of sales tax. That was part of our operating budget. So 43%, there it is. 43% is what we operate on as far as sales tax, and then it'll be state turn back and grants. So like I said, shop local, that's the main thing. Your next town that will, accommodate their needs. And then lastly, community involvement. Volunteer with some of the organizations in town. We had the Chamber of Commerce and the Fulton County Fair Association. During their main events, they're constantly looking for volunteers to help, be it flag, shut down some of the roads during the 5K race, or parking cars during the Fulton County Fair. We need to disconnect and unplug from social media and get involved in our neighborhoods. Can anybody raise their hand if they know everyone in their neighborhood? Well, get out and visit with them. Help them out around the house if there's work to be done. Check in on one another, visit with one another, see how they're doing. Now, I'm not suggesting to be the creeper next door, getting up all in their business, but just simply let them know that you're there, let them know that you care about them, that you're there to help. It's pretty simple. Shop local when you can. Get involved by volunteering within our community and develop positive relationships with the ones around you. So, thank you. Miss Massey, could you please play that final video? This video promotes city and town. The City of Salem is a member of the Arkansas Municipal League. There's many resources that we utilize, and this will just promote a promotional video showing some of the benefits of living within the city limits.
Today was just another day. A day filled with work, shopping, Little League baseball. And we help to make it that way. Whether it's providing police protection or building the ballpark for your son's game-winning double. You never really think about it, but we're there. Making life for your family safer, better, more fun. Whether it's providing enough water pressure to fight fires, or some weekend fun for your daughter in the front yard. There's a real sense of place here, a sense of pride, a sense of well-being, a sense of community. The lifeblood of any city is progress, and that's where economic development comes in. Finding the new jobs and the new opportunities that will keep the city and its residents moving forward. And we're leading the charge. Whether it's negotiating with potential businesses or building streets to their new facilities. Our cities and towns are where we grow and play and live. And all along the way, we're building something, because this is home. A better life starts in the city limits. From small towns to big cities, Arkansas's municipal communities improve our quality of life every day. This moment brought to you by your hometown. The Arkansas Municipal League. Great cities make a great state. For more information, just go to greatcitiesgreatstate.com.
Again, we thank you, Daniel. Appreciate so much what you're doing for our city. And we simply want to become a bigger part of building our community, making a difference long term. Many of us grew up around this area, this community, this county, and we just want the county to be better and more of what it should be. And the only way that can happen is for each of us to do our part. And if we don't do our part, we can't expect someone else to do their part. So let's be involved. Again, thank you so much. This is the fifth and last Sunday that we have been talking about community and our relationships within the community. And I want to finish up today by just simply using my title as the springboard. Let's get started. Let's get started. It's not enough to talk about it. It's not enough to think about it. It's not enough to dream about it. We have to come to the point where the rubber meets the road and say, you know what? I'm going to do something now. I believe our future is wide open and it's ahead of us. So all we need to do is engage and begin. But here's the issue. You never finish what you don't start. If you don't start, you're not going to conclude. You're not going to find a finishing spot. I want to use today the life of Moses to kind of tie everything together and finish up this series on this. I want us to do what God's called us to do. I want us to make a difference. I want us to win our community to Christ. I want to see us have the best community in the entire world as people are born-again believers who love the Lord and want to make a difference in the lives of their family, their friends, their community, and our state, and eventually our nation and our world. But if we're going to reach that end, we have to start, and now is the time to start. But before we do that, I want you to fast forward in your life to your funeral. You've lived your life. Your funeral is now over. The last shovel of dirt has been thrown upon your grave. And now everybody's back at your house and they're eating your food. And they're drinking your drinks. And they're walking on your carpet. And they're raiding your refrigerator. But they're talking about you. They're talking about you. What do you want said? What do you want said? When all is said and all is done, what do you want to be said about your life, about you, about the difference you made or the lack of difference that you made? I think many of us need to change. We need to make a difference because, as I said a moment ago, you never finish what you don't start. So what I want us to do is to get out of the cul-de-sac of indifference and move out into our community and begin to change our community. I want you to stand with me. We're going to read the book of Hebrews, chapter 11, verses 24 through 26. I want to start with the end of Moses' life, just like I want you to go to that end of your life and take a look. In verse number 24, this is the Hebrew Hall of Fame. Moses was one of the great Israelites, Jewish people in history. And in verse 24 it said, "By faith Moses, when he became of age, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the passing pleasures of sin, esteeming the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures in Egypt." Here it is. "For he looked to the reward." Father, I pray that we would look at the big picture and we would recognize the fact that we are to live our lives to honor and glorify you. And Father, as we look at your example throughout Scripture, we see that you went about doing good. You engaged your community. And Father, help us to do the same. Help us to make a difference in our family, our church, our community. Lord, help us to step out of that cul-de-sac of indifference and make. Now, let's go back to the beginning of Moses' life. That was the end of Moses' life. In the beginning of Moses' life, if you remember, Pharaoh was taking the life of all of the male children because the population was growing so rapidly. He was afraid they would take over Egypt. They were enslaved in Egypt. So what he does, he starts putting to death those children, those babies, all of the male children. But because Moses' mother was a godly lady and she refused to have his life taken, she put him in this little ark, this little boat, placed him in the great Nile River and began to send him downstream. I believe it was done because she knew who would be downstream that day, and that was Pharaoh's daughter, who obviously had a bigger heart than Pharaoh had. And as Moses is there in that little ark, takes him, and just by happen chance, guess what? Moses' sister's there, and she said, I know someone who can feed that baby and take care of that baby. We'll fetch them. So guess who she goes and gets? Moses' mother. Wow. Imagine that. And then for all of these next 40 years, Moses is raised in pomp and circumstance, wealth, anything that he possibly could want. I mean, the best of food, the best of clothes, the best of conditions, the best of medical care. Everything that he could want, it was right there for him. And then Moses, he begins to identify, because undoubtedly his mother told him the history. He was an Israelite, and what had happened to the Israelite boys. Moses then goes out into the field one day and he sees an Egyptian treating an Israelite poorly, and he strikes that Egyptian and takes his life. And then he begins to wonder and worry, oh no, now because I've taken a life, they're going to take my life. The next day when he's walking around, one of the Israelites said, is there fussing with another Israelite? He said to him, Moses, would you take my life too? And then Moses realizes the circumstances and the situation, and he leaves and he flees to the desert. And for the next 40 years, he's come out of the palace. Now he's in the desert. He's in the wilderness. But he meets a girl. He gets married, has 2 children, and he stays there 40 years, and the life's pretty good. I mean, he's a shepherd. He's a father. He's a husband. He has sheep. Life is pretty good for him. And then one day, when he was just going about his normal business, he sees a bush that's burning. And he wanders over to that burning bush because it's not consumed. It's on fire, but it's not burning up. Now, I've seen a lot of things on fire. I've seen a lot of things burn up. So Moses goes over and he has this conversation with God. Now, first thing he has to do is take off his shoes. You're on holy ground. So he approaches the bush and he begins to talk through this conversation. So I want us to pick up there with the conversation in the book of Exodus, chapter 3 is where we're going to start. And there are 3 points I want to make quickly. The first point that I want to make is this. God was telling Moses, start where you are. Don't worry about where you're not. Start where you are. In chapter 3 and verse 11, Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and that I should bring the children out of Egypt? Because God said, I want you to go back. I want you to deliver the Egyptians, or the Israelites from the Egyptians, about 2 million people. And Moses says, God, who am I? I mean, who am I? And you know what? God is saying to Moses, just start where you are. And Moses is like, whoa, wait a minute, God. This is Moses you're talking to. Remember my history. It's me, remember? I killed a guy back in Egypt. My picture's still up in the post office. I go back, it's for me. I ain't doing it, God. Listen, who am I? And he was basically saying, send somebody else. I can't do that. Many people say that same thing. I can't do anything. I know, John, you've talked about this community thing. I know you've talked about the hospital. You've talked about the school. You've talked about the police force. You've talked about all of these things, our city, our county. But what can I do? Who am I? What can I do? I'm going to tell you what you can do. You can engage. You can get involved. You can make a difference. You say, well, I'm just or nobody will listen to me. I can't. I want you to listen to God's response to Moses, because I think it's the response that each of us should hear today. In verse 12. So he said, this is God speaking, I will certainly be with you, and this shall be a sign to you that I have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall serve God on this mountain. But I want you to notice those words, I will certainly be with you. You know what God says to Moses? I know, Moses, you can't do it, but I want you to know something. I will be with you. I won't leave you. I won't forsake you. Every step of the way, I'm going to be right there with you. Now, I don't want you to downplay that. I want you to understand that and grasp what he's saying there. Listen, when God's with you, you can do anything. And I know you say, well, you know what, John? God was talking to Moses just like you're talking to us. God's never talked to me that way. Well, let's just bring this down where the rubber meets the road. You ever been somewhere, it got kind of ugly, and you're like, oh no, this is not good. I'm kind of fearful. Let me tell you what. Back, I was 20 years old. I had a dirt bike. Man, I loved riding. I loved jumping. I loved speed. I loved climbing things. I loved riding through the water. I loved it all. The dirt, the grit. I mean, it was fun because it was exciting. Had a buddy. This was back in the time, some of you will remember this, some of you are too young, but back in the time when Rambo was big. Remember Rambo? Huh? First Blood? The knife? You know, my buddy had one of these knives. And we were riding one day, and we were at this place called Bull Taco. I mean, it's just these huge sand hills. And we'd ride out there, and you know, I thought I was never a fighter. I hadn't been in a fight since 7th grade, got whipped then. I mean, I've not ever been a fighter, okay? But my buddy, he was like Rambo. I mean, you know, he was built. His name was Steve Whelpley. I mean, and he was wild. He was a survivalist before it really came in vogue. And we were out there, and we were Air Force guys, so the locals really didn't like us, and there were some locals riding around. We stopped, and they started giving us a hard time. And I thought, man, I'm fixing to get on my bike, and I'm getting out of here. You know, I can see the handwriting on the wall. Hey, sorry, you're healed. We're out of here, brother. Not Whelpley. He said, make me. And I thought, I'm leaving. Then I looked at him, and I looked at those guys. And I looked at his eyes, and I looked at those guys. Man, there was no fear in his eyes. There was fear in those guys' eyes. He said, make me leave. I said, yeah, you make us leave. I got brave then, you know. You know why I got brave? Because of who I was with. And I want you to understand something. We are with God, and God is with us, so we can be brave, and we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us, because He is with us. So start where you are. The second thing is, use what you have. Look at chapter 4, verse 1 and 2. Then Moses answered and said, but suppose, Moses isn't done. He's not really ready to back God up. He said, but suppose they will not believe me or listen to my voice. Suppose they say, the Lord has not appeared to you. So the Lord said to him, second thing I want you to get, what is that in your hand? Moses said, this? Oh, you know what that is, God. That's a rod. You know the second thing? Use what you have. God asked Moses, what's in your hand? Moses says, God, that's a... God had basic tools, a staff. And he has that staff. Wasn't anything special. That was just a piece of wood. It was a staff that he had in his hand. But he'd had that staff in his hand for 40 years. And then God will tell him later, Moses, throw that staff down, and that stick becomes a serpent. And he say, pick it up, and it becomes a staff again. And a little bit later, Moses will take that staff and reach over the Red Sea, and the Red Sea will part because of that staff. And a little bit later after that, Moses will stand on the mountain, and as long as he's got that staff lifted up, the Israelites are winning the battle. But when his hands fall down, the Israelites lose. What's in your hand? It's just a staff, God. But God says, you know what? I will take something so ordinary and I'll make it extraordinary if you'll trust me. But you have to trust me. You have to trust me, Moses, and then I will do great things through that. But I think God asks us the same thing today, and here it is. What's in your hand? What do you have? What do you have? You say, well, my Bible. I don't have anything in my hand. Yes, you have something in your hand. You say, well, Brother John, all I have is this really obscure talent. I can cook. I can cook. That's about all I can do. You know, one of the greatest ministries we have at Salem First Baptist Church is taking food to people who need it. I can only cook. Guess what? Use it. I can only cook. Well, Brother John, you know what? I can do something that a lot of young people don't know how to do. I can can. I know how to can food. Great. Teach a class on it. Help somebody else. Brother John, I'm good at gardening. Great. You know what I want us to do? I want us out here to have a community garden. Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be great? People could come, they could work in it, they could pick their vegetables, they could enjoy what we have there. We can come together. But John, I can sow. We have sow and share. How many people are blessed by that? You go to the nursing home, you'll see all these residents, they'll have sow and share blankets given by Salem First Baptist Church. What's in your hand? What's in your hand? It's a common object, but you know what? It can be utilized for extraordinary good. We can take something that's very, very ordinary and make it useful. You say, well, I can mow. Hey, there's a lot of people in our community that need their yards mowed. That should get an amen from somebody, especially the mayor. I mean, come on. I mean, we can help clean our community. We can make a difference in our community. We move some staff. It was some stuff. We'll utilize the talent that you have. What's in your hand? Use what's in your hand. That's exactly what God wants you to do. Listen, third thing, last thing that I want to share with you is out of Exodus chapter 4, verse 10 through 12. Now, we need to start where we are. We need to use what we have. But thirdly, we need to do what we can. Watch what he said in verse 10 through 12. Moses said to the Lord, "Oh my Lord, I'm not eloquent." In other words, I've got this speech impediment. I stutter a bit. And he said, "Neither before nor since you have spoken to your servant, but I am slow of speech and slow of tongue." So the Lord said to him, "Who's made man's mouth?" Moses, do you not think I know that? Or who makes the mute, the deaf, the seeing, or the blind? Have not I the Lord? Now I love verse 12 because this is what I want you to see. Now therefore go, and I'll be with you. I'll be with your mouth and teach you what you shall say. You know what God says to Moses? Go! Go! Get started. I'm tired of talking to you about this. Hurry up, Moses. It reminds me of when Sandy and I were younger and had our children at home and they were very young. Sandy would bathe the kids. They would come get in my lap and I would tell them stories. I'd read the Bible to them. I'd pray with them. I'd go do all these things. And they'd be, oh. And they'd just be like falling asleep in my arms. And I'd say, it's bedtime. Bam! It's like you gave them 5-hour energy, you know. And then all of a sudden they'd just perk up and they were wide awake and they'd say, I'm not tired. I don't need to go to bed. Could you read me a story, Dad? Could you read me a story, please? Any story will be fine. I need a drink of water. When are we going to Grandma's again? How about this Band-Aid? Look at that Band-Aid. Where did we get that Band-Aid? I mean, all these crazy, you know what I'm talking about if you're a parent. And it's like, whoa, go to bed. Go to bed. And God is saying to Moses, I'm tired of hearing the excuses. Go. Just go. And that's what God's saying to us. Just go. Quit making excuses. I'm too old. I'm too young. I'm too feeble. I'm too intelligent. I'm not intelligent enough. There's nothing I can do. You can all do something. We can all do something. We can make a difference. Today is the day to get started. It's not tomorrow, it's not next week, and it's not next year. God's telling Moses this right now. I'm not going to give you a pre-flight itinerary of where you're going. I'm just telling you, go. Get up and start. You know what? When I think about our community and about our city, you know what I think about? I want a better community. I want a better city. I want a better school. I want a better hospital. I want a better church. I want better families. That's what I want. And God says, listen, if you want it, you've got to go. I want a drug-free, clean city. I want our schools to be the best. I want our hospital to be the best it can be for a small community. I want our church to be an A-plus church. I want us to be that. But you can't ever become that until you take the first step. And if we're not willing to take that first step, we'll never make it. And then once you take that first step, you have to follow through, because what often happens, people say, well, I'm going to take that step. And they take that first step and they say, there's 28 more steps. What about step number 28? I don't know how to get step 2. Take step 2. Then you take step 3. Then eventually you arrive at your destination, but you can't ever get there if you don't start. Harrison's not here today, but Harrison Henley, he and I went to a Razorback ball game several years ago. And we got there, and his uncle knew a gentleman that worked for the university, and this gentleman could get us into the dressing room. Hey, what Hog fan doesn't want to go to the dressing room, see all that stuff, smell all that sweat? I mean, come on. If you're an athlete, that's what you want. So you know what? We got to go down in there. We got to see everything. Got to go out by courtside. It was awesome. And then not only did we get to do that, but the guy said to us, "Hey, would you like to go into the ESPN truck where everything is done and all of the games are on and all of the interviews, where all the action?" It's like, yeah, I want to do that. So he did. We went behind the scenes. We got to sit in there with those guys. It was awesome. They took the time to answer questions. It was like, this is the bomb. This is cool. But how do we get access? I didn't know anybody. It was by knowing somebody that knew somebody, and that somebody happened to be somebody that had access to where other people couldn't go. Now, I want you to hear me. God has access where other people can't go, and He said, listen, you come with me, and I'll get you in behind the scenes. But you're going to have to trust me, and then you're going to have to follow me, and then you're going to have to listen. And don't worry about step number 21 or 28. Just take step 1. Then you take step 2. And then you take step 3. And eventually you're there. So all the way back to Hebrews chapter 11 again, as we get ready to close, verses 24 through 26, the end of Moses' life. By faith, Moses, when he became of age, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the passing pleasures of sin, esteeming the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures in Egypt. For he looked to the reward. You want to make a difference? Step out. Step out. Quit making it about you. It's bigger than you. Well, back to your house. They've thrown the last shovelful of dirt on your grave, and everybody's still talking. Sitting on your furniture, eating your food, sucking up your air. And they're talking about you. What will be said? Matthew 5:13 through 16. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its flavor, how shall it be seasoned? It's good for nothing to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men. You are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do they light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. Let your light so shine before men. Here it is, guys. It's not just so we'll have this A1 community. Here it is. That they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. This is our city. This is our county. These are our counties because we're cross counties here. Let's do great things together. How do we do that? The last 5 weeks has told us. The Bible says, he that knoweth to do good and does not do it, to him it is sin. Listen. Let's make a difference. Get involved. Every head bowed and every eye closed. Father in heaven, I thank you for loving us. I thank you for our community. I thank you for our leaders in our community. I pray that you would bless them. I pray that we might serve you and seek you and love you with all of our heart, mind, soul, and strength. And Lord, that we might be the type of community